I said to mum and dad, I want to get into property. You guys really want to get into property too, so let's do it together.
Imagine the power of that applied for our clients.
We would light the mattress on fire a little bit in a certain space and all just drink beers.
We've gone through the cycle where people have over-leveraged and now they're panicking because they're negatively geared, hot water system burst, that sort of stuff can push people over the edge.
I'm always watching the big sharks.
These massive companies have huge research and development teams in the back end where they're going to put their money. They know that there's going to be a return. They're not silly people.
No.
So introduce yourself to the listeners because they may not, or they won't have heard you before.
No,
and
never.
Now we can jump in. So
my name
introduce yourself.
is Aaron Savage. I'm Italian by heritage and I like long walks on the beach. I own an Australian blue heeler cattle dog. Her name is Lady. I would defend her to the ends of the earth. I have a wife. And I started investing in property and getting really into property when I was 20.
Nice.
Okay.
Awesome story. Great. Starting young.
It's a little bit, yes, started young. Don't know what triggered it. Just got through the doors at home one day and I said to mum and dad, right, I want to get into property.
Yep.
And I don't know how. And I think, I know I'm 20. I've got a pretty low income and you guys really want to get into property too, so let's do it together.
Yep.
So that's pretty much what we did.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. And you're working in disability services at the time?
Not right now, no.
No.
I'm working for the Institution of Quarrying Australia, doing school visits and educating people about jobs and the workforce that is quarries.
There you go. I didn't know you did that, Aaron.
There you go.
Oh.
Yeah, I did do that. And I did, the IQA, Institute of Quarrying Australia, ran out of funding when I was under contract on my first house.
Yeah, cool.
So that was stressful. Yeah, so I lost my job, got made redundant, and then went into disability.
Yep.
Didn't think I would enjoy disability. Thought to myself, man, I grew up with a disabled brother. I've had disability around my life for a very long time.
Yep.
Just don't think I'll enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Did it for 5 years and loved it. Okay.
Wow.
Yep. So
That's a
that
good
was
story.
It is. Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of people say, "Oh, Aaron, I don't know what I want to do in life." I'm like, me neither.
Yeah.
Just don't do nothing.
Yeah.
Is always and if an opportunity comes up, just do it because give it a crack.
Yeah.
Because even if you have doubts about it.
Absolutely. So then how you got into real estate was Greg and I had seen you go on this personal investing journey.
Yes.
For a number of years. You'd amassed a small portfolio, you and your parents, which is really cool to see at such a young age. And we could just see this shining light through you that's like, this guy just loves real estate and loves property investing.
Yes.
Imagine the power of that applied for our clients. Like, how cool could that be?
Yeah.
And now you're kicking goals. You wrote $2.5 million worth of contracts yesterday.
Yes.
For clients, which is just amazing.
Yep.
So let's go back. You've walked in the back door, said to mum and dad, hey, I want to embark on a property investment journey.
Yep.
I need some help to do it. What happened after that?
We bought our first property is what happened. We went and looked at a few houses, and all I knew is that the one thing that increases in value, there's a few things that contribute to that value as well, but the one thing that increases in value on a property is the land.
Yep.
So one thing I knew I wanted was a big block of land, and a big block of land is, in the Toowoomba city is something that's over 1,000 square meters.
Yep.
Okay, so we were looking at properties that were 1,000 square meters or bigger, and we didn't care about the improvements on the property. We didn't care if the house was nearly falling apart, if it needed TLC. We were just looking at the land value and the location, because it's all about location, and how much land you're buying.
Yes.
Okay. So we found this property on Hume Street, just next to the South Toowoomba Bowls Club.
Yep.
We purchased it. Put in about 450 to 550 of our own man hours, getting that bad boy ready for a tenant to live in because it was in a state.
Yep.
When we bought it, it needed a lot of love.
Yep.
And then I lived in that house actually. I lived in that house while we renovated it, and it was a lot of bedrooms to this house. So I had six other guys.
Yeah.
We used to call it the Hume Street Hustlers.
Yeah.
And all the boys, it was just a big just a absolute den.
Yeah.
There's no better way to put that. It
Yeah.
was just a den of dudes. And
den
it was
of
all
dudes,
den
I
of
love
dudes, and they were just having a good time. We used to we had, when I first bought the property, there was this bed that was left behind.
Yeah.
And it was crusty. The mattress was awful. But one thing we'd do as a tradition every time one of the Hume Street Hustlers moved on
Yeah.
was we would light the mattress on fire a little bit in a certain space and all just drink beers and just send them off.
Yeah. The joys of being a 20-something-year-old
dude, yeah,
dude
just
in a house full of other dudes.
Other dudes, yeah. And you could imagine that it's not the cleanest kept house at this point.
I can imagine
There's
that.
renovations going on.
Yeah.
I lived in the smallest room to give all the other guys bigger rooms, so it made sense for the rent they were paying and that sort of thing.
Yep. So you were making holding income whilst you were renovating.
Yeah.
From
doing
a bunch of
rooming
guys
agreements with my mates.
Yeah, who didn't really care the state of the house.
Nope.
They were just happy to have a roof over their head.
And a lot of fun.
And they didn't have to live at home.
Yep, basically, yep. So they got used to living out of home. I had Ben Yong, who, he owns a business in town. He lived there for a long while, and he really wanted to live there because he just wanted to experience living out of home before he got married.
That's so good.
So it was pretty cool. And then I guess going through that phase, the boys all started to move on.
Yeah.
I actually moved back home with mum and dad for a little while, and then we put a tenant in the home.
Yes.
And that tenant has been a fantastic tenant. They've been there since we've put them in there. So they've been there for nearly 4 years now.
Yeah,
So
that's fantastic.
long-standing tenant.
Yeah.
Look after the property.
Yeah.
And that's really all you can ask for, I guess, when you put a tenant in a property. So.
Awesome.
We moved on to property number 2 in 2021.
Yep.
So we purchased the first property in 2018.
Yep. So what was that, 3 years?
Yeah, yeah. I would have liked to do another one sooner, I think, but just life happens. Life's the thing that happens while you're planning life.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing about real estate as well. That's one of the reasons I really advocate for getting into real estate, because you have options and you have choice in life when you buy real estate and when you've owned real estate. And sometimes people get overwhelmed by those options and those choices that they have to make, but at least you have them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's better to have options than not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So we purchased, funnily enough, literally a 3-minute walk just around the corner in South Toowoomba again.
Yep.
And then we did a much smaller renovation this time. So our purchase price was a little bit more expensive.
And what was your investment thesis for purchasing this second property?
It had this one was a smaller block this time.
Okay.
But I now, after owning the first property for a while, I knew what tenants were looking for in such a stressed, tight rental market.
Yes.
Okay. So I knew that tenants really wanted space, plenty of storage.
Yep.
Lots of bedrooms, and 2 bathrooms is a bonus. And then other potential spaces to do creative and wonderful things like put a kitchenette in or use it as a laundry. So having dual purpose spaces is always a bonus, because tenants can just come in and they can either have a family or 2 families together, or they can get grandma and grandpa involved and they can all rent the house together and make it far more affordable.
Yeah.
So the landlord wins because he gets premium rent.
Yes.
The tenant wins because they get affordability. So that's what I saw in this next property.
So
it was a 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 6-bay sheds.
Yes.
So lots and lots of storage on the property, which is what I really liked.
Yeah.
We picked it up for $400,000 and we put about 20 into it. So our initial investment after stamp duty and all those other costs and legal costs, it was probably about $425. All up.
Great.
I believe the renovation was probably only about 15, but you usually add about 10 grand on for any other costs and fees.
That's right.
Involved.
And there's things that you don't track along the way, your time and all that sort of stuff that compounds in that process as well.
Exactly. So we definitely didn't put a 400 to 550 hour reno into this one this time. This was a much simpler one, and we actually began contracting out to some builders and stuff for this one as well.
Okay.
For a few bits and bobs. Really was nowhere near as much work as the first property either, which was good.
Sure.
We then got a fantastic tenant in,
Yep.
paying a really good rent, and they were getting great affordability for the space they were getting for that rent.
Were you able to secure one of the dual family sort of setups with the house that size?
Yeah, so it was actually, I think it was a family of 3. So it was
Yep.
a mum, a dad, and a kid, and then an uncle and auntie. So a
Oh, yeah.
sibling
Yep.
of either the mum or the dad. I can't
Yep.
remember off the top of my head. But that was the situation. And they looked after that place marvellously. And then we sold it. We sold it literally, I think in 2023.
Yeah.
And that was because, once again, life happens, and life is the thing that happens while you're planning life. I would have loved to have kept it, but
Yep.
I got married,
Yep.
and I just didn't feel super comfortable entering a marriage with that much debt on my shoulders,
Yep.
and we still hadn't bought our own house
Yeah.
to be in.
Yep.
So we sold it, and we sold it for a really good profit, which
Yep.
was awesome, especially for only holding it for a year and a half, 2 years, which was fantastic. And then we bought a house over in Wilsonton, which is another renovator, and we're living in that now and renovating it.
Yeah, with your new wife and your cattle dog.
And my cattle dog lady. So
Yeah.
that's, once
Lovely.
again, that one is 1,000 square metre block, or just a little bit more. I like space. The dog needed space. I found it off market. My dad called me over to the computer and he said, have a look at this. And it was it came out of a newsletter that a real estate agent had put out.
Yep.
It was a really old school newsletter.
Yeah.
I called the phone number. I was the first buyer to call.
Yep.
And we're buying in the middle of 2023. So
peak,
we are a hot market.
Yeah.
Don't muck around. I got an inspection. I called my wife after the inspection and I said, hey, I'm buying a house for us. That went down like a lead balloon.
Yeah, that's such a blind trust.
Yeah, no, I definitely learned a pretty important lesson about communicating properly then.
Yeah.
So she came and saw the house, also liked the house, and then we bought the house.
Sweet. Yeah.
Which was good.
You got the seal of approval.
Yeah. So we're learning how to live in that whilst also renovate it.
Yep.
Which is stressful.
Yeah. But you've done the bathroom. I think you did an Instagram post with your before and after on your bathroom.
Yep.
Looks awesome. So, that's just proof that if you're happy to sacrifice a little bit, you can really make the gains. And Wilsonton, as we've discussed in other pieces of content, other videos and all that sort of stuff, Wilsonton's one of those suburbs at the moment where you've got close proximity to the new hospital that's being redeveloped in Toowoomba. So that Wilsonton, Rockville, Cranley and Wilsonton Heights area, we really see as a pocket for growth and potential. And you've put your money where your mouth is. You've actually invested in the suburb. You're doing the reno. You're sacrificing, living in something brand new and nice and shiny with your new wife for the sake of long-term wealth building,
Absolutely.
which I think is really commendable.
Absolutely, yeah. And we, to be honest, we just weren't super keen on having a massive mortgage for our first home, because there's a lot you need to work through, I guess, and just figure out about the other person. And having a mortgage on top of all that is like a really intense one.
Absolutely.
Is big.
And financial pressure is something that we're seeing in our clients that they're feeling with increased interest rates, a not favourable economic environment at the moment to really upgrading your investment portfolio and really splashing out a heap of cash, which is fair enough. And we've gone through the cycle where people have over-leveraged and now they're panicking because they're negatively geared. A hot water system bursts. Hot water systems, $1,800 to $2,500. That sort of stuff can push people over the edge. So I think that's really wise of you in your young age and in your new marriage to really just assess that quite carefully and be understanding of the season of life that you're in.
And even though it was a personal property to live in, there was still a lot of analysis that went into it. So when I was thinking about buying in this specific area of Wilsonton, I noticed that there was plans for a new Starbucks to go in. There's a Carl's Jr. They just opened the GYG with full drive-through and your favourite, the breakfast menu.
I do love the GYG breakfast menu.
I had the breakfast menu. And I nearly went, no wonder Jacob liked this so much. It's so plain and boring. But they forgot to put the sauce on my burrito. So I got another one. And I was like, oh, no, this is pretty good. So,
that, Jacob.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you want to get Jacob anything, it's fish and chips with no sauce. Or a chicken schnitzel with nothing. Just a chicken schnitzel.
No aioli.
No aioli.
No salad.
No fun.
Just
Just shit.
Just give me the protein.
Yep, just the protein, just crumbed protein is all he needs. So, but no, you really should get stuck into the GYG breakfast menu. It's delightful.
Yeah, not sponsored.
No, absolutely.
I wish we were sponsored by Good Smoke.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
But
I used to work there. I've got it in for us.
Yeah. We'll talk about that offline.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you saw the potential. You saw the growth in the suburb.
Yep.
Yes, you've got great proximity to the infrastructure piece being the hospital.
Yes.
But also that the consumer-facing piece.
Yes.
Being, the new takeaway stores.
Yep.
The upgraded and redeveloped shopping centre,
Yep.
which is sort of just seems to continually be upgraded over in Wilsonton.
It's just crazy.
They're never finished.
Yep.
They finish one bit and then they start the next bit and then they're redeveloping the bit that was done before that again. So
there's a pet barn going in, a new 7-Eleven. There's heaps of money. And when anyone asks me, Aaron, how do you identify good growth areas and in various areas to buy money in? I like to say to them, look, if you're a first-time property investor, imagine yourself as a little fish, and I'm still a little fish.
Yep.
And I'm always watching the big sharks, and the big sharks are your Bunnings, your government, your GYG, your Starbucks. Everyone in Toowoomba was like, man, that's such a weird place for a Starbucks to go, for the first Starbucks to go.
Drive through is chock-a-block.
Yep, it's chock-a-block. And they did their research. It's because Starbucks is a billion-dollar?
Yeah.
It's a massive company. And so I know that they're investing way more money than I ever could into the research of the area of Wilsonton.
That's right.
So following those big sharks and looking where they're building and they're putting shops is super important when buying property.
Yeah, where money goes, growth flows.
Yep.
Really,
yep.
You can draw the lines. You can connect the dots
between
where a Bunnings goes and where the next pocket of growth goes. These massive companies have huge research and development teams in the background.
Yes.
Huge property teams as well.
Yep.
That just invest so much into the back end research and where they're going to put their money. They know that there's going to be a return. They're not silly people.
No, they're not.
If you can,
they're smarter than you and I.
Oh, absolutely.
At the end of the day.
Yep.
Yep.
And as a retail investor, I shouldn't say retail investor, as a generic 1, 2, 3 maybe property investor, they're great yardsticks to measure off and sort of work out.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, if you were to give us maybe your top 3, just because I know we're getting a little bit long now, if we start to finish up and wrap up, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for someone looking to invest? They're young, they're hungry, they want to start building some wealth.
Yep.
What would be your top 3 pieces of advice?
First tip, assess your situation.
Yep.
My situation was I couldn't buy on my own, so I looked to go in with my family, and that's definitely not a recommendation across the board, because some people that would be a terrible idea to go in with your family potentially. So I know other people who have gone in with friends. I know other people who have just looked at, I can't afford a house, why don't I get my first deal, why don't I do a renovation unit? So just assessing your situation and what you can realistically do first. Because I promise you, if you don't start now, you'll regret it in 3 years' time when you look back and you go, oh, gee, I just wish I started. Tip number 2 would be don't underestimate renovations as a value add, because renovations is quite literally the most simplest form of property development. Everyone hears the term property developer and they just think of some absolute property mogul who's just rocks up in his Bentley or whatever. No, I'm actually a property developer because I have developed and improved property. That is the basic terminology for property developer.
I love that.
Is someone who just takes a property and develops it in some way, adds value. Okay, so whether you're building 20 units on it or you're updating the paint and carpet, you're still a property developer. So good. And keeping it simple. That'd be number 3. Start simple. So,
and you got to identify the areas of a property that are going to make you money. So bathrooms, kitchens, living spaces. Bedrooms don't really add value.
No, not really, no.
Laundries don't really add value.
Never.
It's really those key areas where people are going to spend a lot of their time.
The family areas, the dining. And especially if you can make something open plan. A lot of the old school houses, you loved to section everything off. We'll have the kitchen in this little room, we'll have the dining room right next door. And if you can knock a wall out if it's not load bearing, that's not too complicated. And it adds a lot of value.
That's so good. Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate your time coming on, sharing some of your advice, sharing your story as well. I think that's really important for our listeners to hear. If someone is listening, they want to learn more, how can they reach you?
Just give me a call on my phone number, or
Yep.
send me an email.
Yep.
If you just go to the Hot Property website, I'm
Yep.
there.
Instagram at Sold by Savage.
Sold by Savage.
Sold
You
by
can find me on
Savage.
Instagram.
Yep.
Follow what's selling in Toowoomba, and yeah,
Awesome, mate. Thank you.
absolutely. No worries, man.